Hello, everybody, extraordinaires. I just really wanted to get in a room with you guys and talk about. We have 4 people that it'll be their first summit. A lot of people. It's going to be their second, third. So I wanted to kind of go back down memory lane and just us kind of have a conversation and rekindle some fire. That why do we even do summits? Where did it come from? And just have some fun about talking about over the years how it's changed and it's progressed and what it means.
Sure.
So that's my question. Why the hell?
Why the hell do we do this?
Do this?
Great question.
It's cool to hear you ask that question. We all have fond memories of 2006 when we met. Shortly after we met, the organization we were a part of, they said, "Man, you guys have got to go to Oklahoma City. We've got 2 major events throughout the year. You got to go. You got to really get a." I can tell you a lot about what you're a part of, but until you go to a live event and you truly see it and feel it, you won't really understand it. I think about those early days back 2000, 2007, 2008. Those events changed your whole perspective on what you were a part of, and
So
I think that's part of what we're creating here.
What was that like when you came back from those events? Because I never had a chance to go to Oklahoma, but I remember when you guys would come back from that event, how you felt like there was a shift in your business or whatever you were doing at the time. So talk about
People used to talk to us. They say it's kind of like sex. I can tell you about it, but unless you do it, you can't really appreciate it. And that was the analogy they used to use with the live events. Like, I can try to tell you about what these live events, these big corporate events were like and what they meant and the kind of weight they carried. But unless you go, that's why you got to go. You got to go to Dallas.
So wait,
Got to go to Dallas.
I do also remember. I want you to share this story and how you got to Oklahoma. Can you
my God.
ride in the back of a?
Well, I have to preface it and say there was many Oklahoma cities, right? And the beautiful thing about a live event, especially something like the summit, is you don't just go one time and get everything you need and come back and become a superstar, right? It's about plugging into the mothership, and there are multiple events that lead up to a big event, and all those are in sequence are important to building momentum. But one in particular was Oklahoma City. And I remember it, very fondly. Rod and I have been running really hard for multiple years, and this particular one, things are just tight and things are tough. And back then, getting a ticket to go to Oklahoma City and having a hotel room and doing all this stuff, it was difficult. There was no
Just the expense of it.
Tickets were a couple $100.
Just
Not
the
to mention
expense.
the travel and the accommodations.
Yeah, I mean, we were independent contractors. We were building our own business together, working on that, and there was no there was no corporate account to kind of make this expense. So it was a challenge financially to even make that happen. And some years it was easier, and some years it was tougher. And this particular year, it was one of those where I didn't necessarily have the money to buy a plane flight. And normal people would say, well, then you can't go.
Right.
And I remember going to a mentor of mine and Rod's, Mr. John Drennan, and the conversation and the direction was always the same, which was, if you say you can't go, well, then you really need to go, right? There's a reason why you can't go, because you're obviously not where you want to be. And because you're not where you want to be, then you have no choice. You need to go. And it was always find a way. There are people that are doing stuff all the time that are way harder than just getting to Oklahoma City and being at an event for 2 days. So, I just found somebody that was going, and they let me hitch a ride with them. And I didn't know how we were going to get back, but there was a bunch of people that were going, and it ended up, there was not as many spaces as I thought there was. It was a minivan, and I ended up being in the back of the minivan. Not in the back of the minivan, but actually the trunk of the minivan.
18 hours.
18 hours.
18, something like that, 18 hours.
Yeah, and it was great. The whole way there, this is part of live events. It's just being around people that are doing the same thing that you're doing and that have the same aspirations you're doing. The whole way, on the whole ride, obviously there's some conversations of family and stuff and just personal stuff, but there's a lot more conversations about how to get to the next level and what are you doing and what are you doing that's different and what doesn't work for you, and just stories of different things that have happened throughout the year that you can pull from and you can share experiences. So the camaraderie, the relationships, the experience, the stories, but really just as more importantly was the push to get there was difficult, which made it even more fulfilling.
Because it was your investment.
It was our investment. It took a lot to get there. And when you're sitting in there and you're taking notes different than the person to the left.
Yeah.
The person to the left, it was easy to get there, and they're there because they don't know whatever. But I had been to multiple events, and I knew the power of these events. But it had never been that difficult to get to an event, and you want to just wring out the
You
spark as much
quantified
as
way
you
more
can.
value out of it the way you approached it.
Right.
You just remind me of something when you talked to our mentor, who a lot of you have met, John Drennan. He's been in a couple of times, talked to us, but you went to him, and his message was the same. And you remind me, that's where we learned that leadership is always consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
The message never changes. It's like you went to John Drennan knowing what he was going to say.
Right.
Probably could have said it the way he said it
Yeah.
with the same mannerisms, and that's where we learned that, that's why, a couple things, that's where you learn that good leadership is consistent, it never changes, and you know that those that you're charged with leading, they start to parrot you when you know you're doing it right.
Right.
The other thing that I think about too is the idea of these events. When you go back to the beginning and you say, we're going to be at these events because it's going to help build our belief. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it.
That was the only thing they used to preach. Is like and you said earlier, right? You go to the first event, you don't know what you're going to be a part of, and you say, well, why do I need to go back again? I've already been to Oklahoma City. I've already seen the event.
Right.
But because of you're forced to develop. You're forced to be different when you go back for that second event or third event or fourth event. And fortunate for us, there was Vegas and Oklahoma City, and they were at 6-month marks apart, right? So here we have our annual summit, and that's our marquee flagship event, but that's annually. That shows the importance of our other events and being live, anything live where you're around, your team and those that you're wrapped with.
Yeah, that's what sticks out in my head when you guys borrow from that experience, and I really think your conviction with that experience, although I was involved in attended live events, never went to Oklahoma City, never went to Vegas with you guys, but we talk about just in general the power of live events. And I think what's beautiful about the summit is everyone gets, and I do this too, you get so ingrained in what you're doing or what you're working on or what your worries are or what your challenges, what your obstacles are. I think when you talk about belief, the summit's always created an atmosphere that you can understand the bigger picture. You can borrow from a perspective that somebody has that you don't have. And when you leave the summit, those things that you were working on maybe not go away, but maybe they're in the proper perspective. And so that's one thing that I look forward to the summits, is just knowing that I'm only one in this vehicle that we've always said that this vehicle is going somewhere, with
or without you.
With or without you.
And us included.
And so I look at the summits that way. And we talk about going back down memory lane. I want to hear your guys' memories of the first summit and kind of how that all came about. Obviously,
before you go on that, Brett, you talk about the vehicle, man, and you think to yourself, when we got involved, really when the three of us got involved, we didn't have a clue. I mean, I was only 3 or 4 months ahead of you when you first got introduced to what wound up ultimately bringing us together. So I didn't have much more of a basis than you. I think I joined and went to the fall event, and then yours next one was the spring event, I think that's how it went.
Yeah.
So I had such a short head start, and then once we got started, it was always, we were all together. So it's like our learning curve and our tenure, was so similar, and there were so many things that overlap, but we always heard people talk about a vehicle. And I think what's neat about Urban Young is when this concept was birthed, it was always talk about just creating a vehicle that people could plug into, find a way to believe in. And there is no better way than live events, and we now know that, and we're seeing the benefits of that. But to see the way that vehicle was modified from year to year to year, really from 6-month mark to 6-month mark to 6-month mark, to see the way that vehicle was moving, and to hear that ringing message every time, with or without you, this company's growing. We learned just how to parrot that here, and now the three of us, that's what we say. It's like our vehicle improves every day, week, month, year, Every summit it looks different. Every summit the team looks bigger. And whether it's more bodies or whether it's just a matter of people becoming more. I mean, every year this summit changes. So.
Yeah, one of the lessons I think is really valuable, those that are watching this, some of us know Robbie Sampson, and obviously super successful dude, great respect we have for him, and he does a lot of Facebook Lives. He did a Facebook Live the other day about not waiting for your pants. I thought that was great. And it talks about, and there's some metaphors in there, but I look at, the first summit was in Banana, right? And it was in a house. Okay, this year we're going to Hammock Beach, to the resort. We've got meeting rooms. We've got booked out. It's to the nines. We have events. There's production value. There's all this stuff that we would consider sexy, right? Well, to me, there was zero sexiness about the first summit. We went to Banana. We sat around in a great room, and we went through content together, right? But the point is, we weren't waiting till we could make a summit sexy. We weren't waiting till we could do all the things that a big company would do and that we were used to seeing. Yeah. The bottom line is, the process and you stick to the process, and you have to start somewhere.
Even if you're bad at it.
Even if you're bad at it. And I look at it from whether you're a sales professional, or you work on the service team, whether you're a young entrepreneur, whether you're starting at something that you've never done before. The bottom line is the process is the process. And putting on a live event, attending a live event is a process. It's part of our system. We just believe that live events lead to the next live event, which leads to the next live event, which leads to our key more, our big summit. And that's proven, it's proven very well for us in our past life, and it's also proven really well here at Urban Young, because I think it gives people the roadmap. I think we can only see so far ahead of us until somebody else shines a bigger light down the road. And a lot of us are operating off of faith. We can see a month down the road. We can see a little bit down, a couple miles down the road, but somebody else is looking 100, 200, 300 miles down the road. And we'd be lying if we said we understood the roadmap and we could see it, because we've never been there. But when you go to a live event and you get a big picture of what this looks like, all of a sudden the lights come on. All of a sudden you know what this looks like, and you get this revived energy of, I can do this. And if they've done it, I can do it. Yeah, and until you go to a live event, you can't, because I think that light bulb comes from an experiential learning. It doesn't come from any book learning. I could show you all day long. You can learn it all day long. You can read it all day long. We could do audio. We could do visual. But the bottom line is, until you feel that, you don't have the belief that you're talking about. You can't book smart your way to belief, right? You can't flashcard yourself to belief. You can only experience something that gives you that belief, and I think these live events are what do that.
You talk about feel, and you talk about that early event. I remember we were on the hurricane.
Yeah.
Remember, we knew that we wanted to have a theme centered around personal growth. We knew that and those early events, that was what it was, right? Even though we were getting metrics and diagnostics and results of what the company was doing, the larger undertone was the fact that we're there to develop. We listened to polished people that had crazier stories than you did and tougher circumstances, and there was never anything that would trump what you were dealing with, right? Or there was always something, I should say, that would trump what you're dealing with. But early on, we knew that we wanted to have a theme centered around growth. And I remember that very first summit was To the Universe.
Yes.
And that exercise we did, some of you may have seen the pictures. If not, we've got them, where we went out on the boat. It was like early in the morning. Cold. The sun was coming up. It was a late October, I think, summit, or early November. I think we planned it on a couple of weeks, or maybe we're like, man, we've got it. We just know we have to do this. But you talk about being equipped or unequipped. We didn't have the means to put it together, but we went. This event wound up being, that was the marquee point of that event. We wrote down on cards what our intentions were for different things. We put them into soda bottles, and we all sat there. There was some amazing audio that was playing, just kind of getting people in the mode to think deeper and what is it you want to do. And then we threw these things, off into the water. But I mean, cool. So you think about that early event, you think about what that vehicle looked like then, what Urban Young looked like then, and then you reference all of the things we've been able to add to our events in an effort to build a better vehicle. Yeah. And it's exciting to see that we've progressed every year, just like we've just like we knew what we were doing.
And my hope is that, that whether it's the first summit or it's the 15th summit, the process is still the same. Whether
Sure.
we're huddled around a TV screen in a room or we're blowing out an arena with 1,000 people, I hope the process stays the same. And, at the end of the day, production value is great because it cements learning and it engages people. But I'm more proud of the first couple summits than I am in the last couple. It's like it's easier to put on an event when you can, make it all flashy. I think it's fun to think about that. You remember what you did when you didn't have anything, or you remember what you did when no one was looking. You remember how you operated when it would be easy to say that it didn't really make an impact, but it made an impact with us, right? It taught us how to go through the process. It taught us how to make sure that we were staying true to ourselves and our team, and we were doing it for our future selves when we looked around and said, there's going to be more than 4 people at this at some point. So if we're going to do it for 20 or 30 people, we should be doing it if there's 4 people.
Well, to stop you, that first summit, it was all partners, wives, and then I think it was Matt.
Yep.
And then
John.
maybe one more
And
team
John.
member, so 2 team members. So what you mentioned is you're in theory putting on this summit for 2 people. But what you're saying is like, hey, no, we're putting on the summit more for us together, so we
Absolutely.
can get
Cool
better.
reminder.
And I, we could do a training on that, because that is envisioning where you want to be even if you're not there.
Yep.
And understanding if one day we want to do X, what does it take today to do that? Another thing I think about is Brett and I's mom and Rod's mother from a different, how do you say that?
Mother from a
Julie, and a lot of you guys know Julie. She came to speak with Melbourne and over the years, but she ran Florida Virtual School, FLVS, and that company over the 17, 18 years as her as CEO grew from very, a smaller company to, I think now they have 3,500 employees, right? So they would have staff conference every year. And I remember the buzz going to staff conference, whether it was us just going to support mom because she was making a keynote speech, or it was the juice that she came out after that live event. So as you're sitting here speaking, I remember that influence was probably a bit subconscious to know that that's what people look forward to.
Yeah.
And the thing about staff conference and the thing about the summit, to bring it back to Urban Young, is you get to have different conversations. You may work in personal lines in this part of the team, but you may not talk to somebody in this part of the team. Or when you do talk to somebody, it's only about
That's right.
a T-Doc, and it's not about where they're from or how their family's doing. And I think that kind of brings a different level. For me, there's 2 things I seek out of a summit. I seek out that conversation that pleasantly surprises me, right? That wow, I really had a good connection. I didn't know this about that person. And then I also seek what you guys are talking about a lot is clarity. When you leave the summit to have a clarity.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear you talk about that. Early summits, you think, wow, we're going to go to Las Vegas, we're going to go to Oklahoma City, and the first thing you think about is the planning that goes into it. I'm going to take advantage. It's going to be like a little mini vacation, right?
Right.
And I know we like to have a good time. I know we're coming off an amazing cruise where we partied our faces off, but this is anything but a vacation, right? They say you go to a vacation because you're exhausted, right? You show up tired, you leave rested. They always used to tell us, you're going to show up rested to these events, and you're going to leave exhausted because of the things you're going to seek out. Not because we're going to party, even though we'll have some fun, but because you're going to be seeking out those conversations. You want to ask questions you never had a chance to ask or haven't asked. That's so cool to hear you talk like that.
And just to mix it up in a different, I think one of the things about the summit that's cool is it's always been a way, right? We've had opportunities, whether it be financially, where we look at each other and say, hey, maybe we have it at each other's house, or maybe we have it at an Orlando hotel, and who knows, but in theory we've always kind of agreed that there's something about getting away from your family, getting away from the atmosphere that you come to work every day, that creates this kind of synergy and this openness that you're willing to have those conversations, that you can inch out of your comfort zone. And that's what's cool to me.
Well, you think about, Banana was very intentional, right? We went there because we knew that it was a family home from you guys, from Bruce and Julie.
Well, it's free.
And it was free, right? They said, hey, you can use it. So we knew that we could take everyone away. We could combine vehicles, get away, and budget-wise, it didn't smoke us. But we were fortunate to land, but we still knew getting out of town was gonna get everybody in a different mode and allow for less distractions. That was always the intent too.
It's true. So let me ask you guys a question. I'll flip the mic. So favorite, if I put you on the spot, favorite summit moment of all time?
I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I was just sitting here thinking about
man, I know
it.
mine.
Was it our second or third summit where we were out at Picnic Island?
Yes.
And we had the candle globes that we, again, it was about what do you want to put to the universe kind of thing. And we lit these candles and they took off.
Letting go of limiting beliefs.
Letting go of limiting beliefs, that's right. That was powerful for me because there was another, that was where we listened to a clip. I don't know that it was the whole crew, but we listened to a clip on Tony Robbins about good results and outstanding results, and you know what I'm talking about. That moment was probably my favorite summit moment by far. Was that year 2 or 3?
Was that extraordinary? Is that where the word extraordinary started?
No, that was where outstanding came from.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah. The go ahead with your favorite summit moment.
No, that's awesome. That was mine too.
Is it really?
That was mine too.
We've never talked about that.
The dramatization of that event and so extreme was incredible. I'll catch everybody up to speed, but basically, in the middle of the bay, there is this island that you can only get to by boat, and people go there to camp, but really there's nobody there. It's very, very tiny.
Well, it's got significance for you
and
guys.
we grew up there, and we used to camp on it. My dad used to take us, and we had our whole family there. But so in the middle of the night, as the sun was going down, we loaded, basically all of us got on the boat. But prior to that, a day earlier, we had loaded up all the supplies on the island and buried everything. So we went early, set it up. So on this island, there was tiki torches set up like Survivor, and a big bonfire, and this scene that had this kind of breathtaking awe to it a little bit. And as we pull up on the boat, I think you had driven the boat up. You played the clip for the whole team, and then when they got off the boat, they had to go onto the island through the tiki torches to the end of this peninsula. And at that point, we had basically lit up the lanterns, and whatever your limiting belief that you had decided that time and that during the day of the summit, that day earlier, you were basically giving yourself permission to release that out to the universe and get rid of that. So that was mine.
Was that year 2 or year 3?
I think it was 3. I want to say it was 3.
I think it was 2.
I thought it was 2 too because there wasn't a large group of us.
Because I remember the personnel; it was the same as year 1.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't hit you, right? So year 1, you have the same team. You go back year 2, the same. Now we have 3 or 4 people that have never attended a summit, right? So you talk about that, and you say you go back with the same crew. You go through the same process of somebody who's already been there.
That's right.
I'll give you mine, and it's specific to somebody that's hopefully listening and watching. When you asked it first, I was like, man, there's so many. And actually, to be completely candid, I thought about my least favorite part of all the summits, which is probably a little bit of self-awareness that I need to work through. But it was a moment when we were in the St. James Civic Center. So the first summit, we have our Impact Award, we have all of our presentation that's done in a family room, right? We're on stools and couches on the floor. And then the second year, we upgrade. It was the second or third year. I know we did 2 years in the St. James Civic Center.
Yep. And what did we spend? $25 to rent it?
No, I think it was 100, which was a big deal to actually rent a venue.
That's right.
And then we had classroom setting, we had tables, we had chairs. I mean, the place was a dump. But but I remember one part about it, and I remember Matt, and it was the last day.
Yes.
And this was either Matt's, I probably want to say his 3rd year. Timeline doesn't matter as much, but there was a clarity where Matt presented the 3 of us with framed pictures, and upon those framed pictures have quotes. That framed picture is sitting in my home office, and it has to do with leadership and it has to do with influence. And I believe the quote is something of the nature that you are a leader when you move others to action that wouldn't be otherwise because you were there. I'm obviously paraphrasing. I think it was by John Adams. The quote doesn't matter. What matters was he went out of his way to present that to us. And what clicked for me is that I saw growth in Matt, right? I saw somebody come in who was borrowing, but maybe unsure, maybe didn't have the level of belief, not maybe, just didn't have the level of belief that maybe you did or Brett did or I did. And now all of a sudden it was starting to click. And it wasn't always him receiving the information. He was now contributing at a higher level.
Sure.
And it moved me emotionally. I don't know if you remember this, but I was sobbing.
Yeah.
Everyone left.
Yeah,
And
I
when we did the summits, we always liked the three of us to download afterwards and really just digest what happened, what was presented. And I don't know if you guys remember that. I was just
do remember that.
uncontrollably sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you guys saying, hey, dude, what the hell is wrong with you? And I was just like, wow, what we do matters. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time that I was emotionally connected to what we did.
Yeah, how about the fact that
That's
you're
really
emotional
cool.
over seeing that in Matt? It had zero to do with what we do
Mm-hmm.
to move to
From
put
insurance,
to
yeah.
put the score on the board, right? It has nothing to do with insurance and everything about, building a vehicle, seeing people plug into a vehicle, seeing people take that vehicle for what it's meant to be, which is a development vehicle, and then have it quantify itself in what you experienced and what you felt. There's that word again, what you felt. I mean,
That's cool.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
cool.
that's not an X and O, that was a feeling.
Absolutely
And
not
then,
an accident.
and then on a side note, what's so ironic about when we're talking about this is pre-summit, right? This is being recorded pre-summit. When I go back to my least favorite summit, and I think I've told this to people, and I don't care, but it was the cruise. And I think we probably, when you think about the cruise, and what was that, 2015, 2016, something like that. When you think about that, you think that should be the best summit, right? We've been having this in the Civic Center and on our family room, and then we jump and we're in the Bahamas,
Yep.
and we're going to deliver a message. And there were some things that went wrong technically, but it was more about the overall level of contribution and interest of our team.
Yeah.
And I remember
It was treated
people
way
being
more like a
late.
vacation.
I remember
Yeah.
people being late. I remember people not being prepared, us included. We take ownership of that. And I remember being so discouraged that actually, believe it or not, if you ask me a lot of those memories from that cruise, I may have one or two good ones, but I don't have the level of memory that we do when we were sitting on the
It's
family.
interesting you say that. You talk
So
about
true.
all those examples you give. Those were things that way more than how are you improving the vehicle from a year ago. They stood out way more than probably our message.
It was almost like a digression.
Yeah.
It was almost like you.
And here we thought it was, we thought this was just a progression. You
Right.
should try to improve the venue every year. I think it's cool that's why we realized that, yeah, the venue's important just because you have to have a common meeting place and you got to have certain accommodations as you start to get better. But it's not about a flashy necessarily, venue. It's way more about what's happening in that boardroom, realizing why you're there, going there with the intention that you're going to not come out the same person. I'm reminded, that was always a challenge. Go to Oklahoma City once or go to Vegas once and try to come back the same way.
Right.
Try to come back without realizing ways you could move yourself and your personal business forward. Cool analogy.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that.
Isn't that funny though?
Yeah.
And we'll have a call about how to attend this summit, and you always go through that process because that's what we do to get prepared. But there's just a level of buy-in. There's a level of understanding. This goes for us too. There's a level of an awareness on what type of conversations that are you having at the summit, right? I know that's something we've always been big on. I know we were called on the carpet by a mentor of ours. The three of us were hanging out one time, and we were having a good time, and like guys do, but ladies, you do too. But you just chop each other up, right? You remember that?
Oh my gosh.
And it was John McIntosh, very
Still gives me
successful,
goosebumps.
very well-rounded career, great family, my dad's best friend, and
Brett's godfather.
and he pulled us aside at the end of the day, and you remember what he said exactly? He just said, "Hey."
He asked us, he looked and says, do
You
you
really
guys like each other?
Yeah, I remember that. That was exactly what he
And
said.
we looked at each other like, we love each other, what's wrong with you? He's like, well, if you listen to yourself, it doesn't sound like you like each other. And his message was clear, that if you love and you like each other, you should look for ways to lift each other up, not look for ways to chop each other.
We used to have a tendency to, as guys do, people do in general, it's like find something to pick on someone about, or every reason not to compliment them. And even though I don't think it was, as we try to replay the message, it wasn't as extreme as what we may make it out to be now, but someone that was that respected, having that sort of perspective on the three of us, even though his perspective wasn't any, couldn't have been further from the truth.
Yeah, but we remember that day. We remember that day. We refer back to it, and so when I think about the summit, or I think about anything within these walls, that tendency is so natural, right? Whether it's our insecurity as individuals, whether it's just a comfort zone, whether it's a way to playfully, have an inside joke with somebody, your tendency to be able to do that, or even a gossip,
sure, is
so natural that it's almost something that it's great to have a conversation about, to really be gearing up for the summit, to be intentional about, like, what am I looking to get out of this? Yeah, maybe there's going to be some fun, there's going to be some relaxation. We don't have to have every conversation about the vision of this company and where you're going personally and what you're reading and what you're developing. But man, those are powerful conversations if they come in a genuine way, and you can be intentional about at least getting to know somebody a little bit better.
We always used to hear about magic happening at our events, at those events back then, and it makes me think. Those of you that have been to summits already, if you think back, I'm sure there'd be people that would say you've experienced certain things that you could consider magical. And I don't mean that to sound corny, but I mean inside your personal selves, inside your business, whatever the case may be. Excuse me. Think about if this little clip kind of sparks some of those thoughts. Share those stories with someone that may be your junior, or maybe hasn't been to as many summits or live events, just to kind of help them get their wheels spinning. Because truly, the other thing you remind me of, Taylor, is the thought of, we're excited about Urban Young. You talk to Matt, or you talk to people that have been here for a long time. People are excited about Urban Young. You start talking about recruiting, right? And we're getting way better at this as we now have more people on this team that can help support what we think is this is a great place. It's a great place to be. Great decision to be here. But how much stronger, how much more powerful would that be if we don't have to say that? If events say that, or if someone is one of the four of you that have never been to an event, you think, man, I think I made a good choice being here and want to be here and want to grow here. But once you go to an event, you let the event do the talking for you. You let the event, show you the value, or you let someone that may be here a little longer, or maybe they've attended a summit or been here, a year or two or three or four longer. Those are the people you want. Those are the conversations you're looking for, because I think ultimately, if it's not one of us trying to explain how excited we are to have the team that is being built, is to let the event or someone else explain that.
You know what it makes me think of too is we all wear these Be Extraordinary shirts, and a group of us went on that cruise, and you get some comments about these shirts. But don't you feel a certain level of responsibility when you wear that?
Mm-hmm.
How you treat your waiter, how you treat your waitress, how you interact with a stranger in the lobby, how you're just hopefully just not an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that when you were saying that triggered to me. Is this is our third year in Hammock Beach, maybe our third
year,
and you wonder, hey, the staff that's known us, I wonder if they're looking forward to us.
What a good thought.
What a challenge, right?
Well, our first year, I feel like our first year, sometimes we got a little sideways. I think we were a little cleaner last year. And cleaner, that could go as, we were on the lawn with Force last year, but I remember being out there long after dark and cleaning up. And I think to your point, it's just a matter of how you carry yourselves.
Yeah.
And the standard that we all agree, is important.
Yep. Do you brighten a room or do you darken a room, right? So, do people look forward to you? Do people look forward to your interactions, or are they cringing like, I don't know what's going to happen here with this crew rolling in? So it's a great point. So a certain level of accountability when you put a shirt on that says that my goal in life is to be better.
Yeah. Who are you with?
I remember we checked in last year, and it was like everywhere you looked right after that first day of Summit, everywhere you looked was either one of us or one of our families, and I'm talking us, our whole team, or one of our families. So we're shoot, we had 30 people on the cruise. I mean, that's a statement.
Rolling deep.
Yeah.
Rolling deep.
Well, I don't know if there's anything that you guys are looking forward to the most about this summit, or if there's anything that triggers that you think is on your heart about us going away. I know for me, I always seek that clarity, right? So when you're talking about the vision and the big picture and seeing 100 miles down the road rather than 10 miles, I think we get as much of that in the preparation for the event and the ending the fiscal year and doing the numbers and understanding where we are. I think we get as much value from it as that we would ever contribute, and I think that's what I look for. We hope to put on such an event that the event speaks for itself, but to really, the event is a vehicle, right?
That's right.
It's not up to us or you to move somebody or give a perspective that's going to change somebody's behavior in a way that ultimately we want it changed. I mean, that's not what this has ever been about, right? I think it's been about a vehicle, and the summit's a vehicle, and to try to create an environment where you have good conversations, to try to create an environment where it's fun and you can get to know somebody and people can let their hair down, to try to create an environment that people can see big picture and numbers and vision that they've never seen before. But ultimately, it's up to the person attending that summit and their lens that they're looking through, whether that affects them or not. You could have somebody, I'll go on about Tori. Tori Scarborough attended a summit. I want to say it was his first summit, maybe it was his second. But there was a conversation that was had after your sales training that really was the beginning of him shaping his entire year and in a lot of portions of his life. And we don't need to get into the details of the conversation, but he had an aha moment. He had a light switch flick on that he went from being an Ian Wire to the Impact Award winner the next year,
yep.
Right? And somebody who really didn't produce anything or much at all goes into a production role and is our top producer.
Yep.
So there is also a little bit of that for those that are listening, and me too while I'm saying this, is that you mentioned this about Oklahoma City, is what lens are you seeing the summit through?
That's right.
How are you preparing? Are you coming with an open mind or a closed mind? Do you already have your mind made up of what this is going to be like? Do you have this is just a rah-rah event that the company's doing, and what is your preconceived notion of what this is going to be like? Because it's probably going to contribute to what you get out of it.
Well, I think about something you said reminded me of the fact that there's not a company hidden agenda to rewire anybody, right? We know who's on the team, we know who's here. We're hoping that you come in with the mindset that if I have a deficiency, if I have something that I want to improve upon, the summit is just real fertile ground to allow a mindset to be opened in order to make that change. And we know there's no quantum shifts. We know there's no quantum leaps. There's no, well, I'm at the summit today, I come home tomorrow, I'm a different person.
Sure.
But realizing that the summit is intended to be a fertile ground to potentially start something on, I think speaks to your Tory comment. That's absolutely what I want out of it. Selfishly, I'm coming into this summit because I'm looking forward to seeing how what some could say is the same content or very similar content. I'm excited to see how I receive the content. I remember, just knowing that and having such a belief, a confirmed belief that from year to year to year, it's supposed to be different, even if it's the same. It's supposed to be different, and if it's not, then I look back on myself. So again, I'm answering your question. I look back on myself and say, well, what didn't I do right, or what could I have done better last year so that this summit didn't seem, oh, I know what's coming now, or I know, for me, it's going to be an awareness to make sure that the information that I receive, that I know is coming, just that I'm in an appropriate spot to receive it, and if I need to make some shifts, realize that the summit is the ground that I want to, the fertile ground with everybody who's locked arms with, people that believe the same as me. There's no better place to start to put something in motion for a new fiscal year and prepare for another summit a year from now. So that's what I'm looking for.
I love that.
Yeah, for me, it's just about finding meaning. For me, the summit is the, clarity is a discipline and a skill set. People think that just being all leadership leaders just have it all figured out, right? And the summit is our time for all the leaders to come and cast this vision for everybody to pick it up. But the reality is we sit in these rooms all the time and we have planning and we talk through things and how's this working? Well, what is this? How does this look? How does your perfect day look? How does this look in 5 years? Are you happy with what you're doing? Do you find purpose? Where are we headed? You know, these are conversations that all of us should be having, and it's a perfect opportunity for us to have a platform to have these conversations. If we didn't have the summit, then it would get gray. You know, it would lack clarity. And so it's just as much of an opportunity, probably more for anybody that's in a leadership role, to be able to circle the wagons and realize, what are we doing here? So for me, I just get excited every year because the prep that goes into the summit is really, for me, it's about, we talked about the vehicle. To me, it's about taking all the different components, disassembling the vehicle, making sure that they all still match the vision of what we're trying to do here, and then reconstructing it exactly how we want it to be, even if it was the same as it was last year. But really just taking a kind of a temperature gauge of where we are, putting it back together, and then shipping it down the bridge. So, when it's over and it's done, and all the stress is relieved from all the prep that we have, there's just this sense of calm and meaning that just is indescribable.
Even
for
leaving
me.
exhausted.
Leaving and exhausted, man. So my hope is that, everybody watching this video, I don't know where this will be internally or if it ends up getting shared externally. So whether it's you attending the summit this year or you're attending some other corporate event or some other personal development event that you're going to, my biggest takeaway and challenge to you would be, I hope you left with more meaning than when you came in. To me, that's where all of this starts. The components, the skill sets, the disciplines, the habits, the lessons that you learn, the things that you can take home to produce and move your needle forward really don't mean anything without an engine that's driving it. And especially here, my hope is that everybody that attends the summit will find their own meaning inside of our company meeting. And if we can do that as leaders and deliver an opportunity for people to kind of, find that, they will have unlocked, and we will have unlocked an incredible amount of, unused potential. Because I've seen that happen with the three of us, and it's a gift. It's a total gift. So,
very well said.
Very well said. It's almost like the company's a vehicle, the summit's the gasoline. Your personal development's the engine, and you're the driver. And that just depends on all those factors coming together. And the summit just seems like a nice finish line and a nice starting point.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Well, we'll wrap this up here. Thank you guys for hanging out and having a conversation. And
what a cool idea to put this together.
Yeah, as we kind of approach this summit, everything that we just said is relevant, and there's really no structure. No intended rhythm other than just to say that we're excited.
Get your minds right.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff.